Hello, everyone, and welcome to Our Time to Thrive. I'm Dr. Krista, and I'm our guide in this podcast and this time that we spend together to learn about holistic medicine, holistic health. So, we have Dr. Adam here today, and we're going to be diving into the topic of the rainbow. And by that, I mean the different colors of foods that we eat and what they all mean for our systems, how they can help.
Yep.
So let's do it. Let's talk about the different colors because a lot of people think, oh, I can just eat the same foods over and over again, and that's going to be the easiest thing for me to do, right? But the problem with that is if you're not getting variation in your diet, then you're not getting a variety of nutrients as well. So we always say it's important to have 5 different colors on your plate at all times.
Yeah. Because what color is the average American's plate usually?
White and more white and maybe some beige.
Yeah, some brown, some meat.
So let's talk about, first color of the rainbow. Let's talk about reds. So red, we know, is very common for lycopene, right? So tell us about what lycopene can do and where you might find lycopene.
Lycopene is an antioxidant that's in your foods in red colored, orange colored, yellow colored fruits, vegetables, peppers like tomatoes, anything that's in that color. So big picture, we're looking at the rainbow because every color that reflects something about that nutrient or that vegetable, that fruit, that it has a particular family of micronutrients, like vitamins or minerals. So in this case, the reds, lycopene is it's a powerful antioxidant that helps your body fight inflammation and fight aging. Oxidation happens which is basically a cellular process where your cells become damaged over time, along with inflammation, and that contributes to aging and dysfunction of your organs and just the opposite of thriving. So to pursue thriving health, you want to make sure you're getting all these different colors. So reds with lycopene, and now that doesn't mean ketchup is red, but you want to go as whole food based as you can. Tomatoes or bell peppers, carrots, things like that.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting about lycopene as a compound is it's best absorbed with fat. So if you are eating your red veggies, your tomatoes, or maybe a fruit like watermelon, you really should add in, some olive oil with that, or maybe some feta or something with your watermelon salad. That's going to help you absorb those anti-cancer properties, for example, and combat that oxidative stress.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So you mentioned some oranges and some yellows. So maybe let's talk about orange, carotene. What kind of things that would be found in and how it helps us?
Beta carotene found in carrots. It's important for eye health, skin health, and that's why it's used. Accutane is high dose vitamin A, basically.
Yeah, carotene is vitamin A. There's alpha and beta, but the skin is one that people use it a lot for, like you said, because our skin. So the reason Accutane works is that vitamin A, high dose of it gets rid of those acne blemishes. But it also can be very toxic for the liver in high doses, vitamin A, which is why they recommend you don't take vitamin A during or when you're trying to conceive. So just be aware of that. But if you're just eating carrots and orange veggies, that's not going to be a problem. You're not going to get too much vitamin A, but it can still support your eye health and your skin health and even your heart health, like you mentioned, which are all great things.
Yeah, a lot of people listening to this want to prevent macular degeneration, eye decline of vision over time.
Yeah.
Very common condition happens with aging. And so not only do you want to eat more orange colored vegetables, but just eating multicolored variation in your vegetables and your produce overall is going to help, because you just want to get a variation of nutrients, which is the whole point of this conversation, a variation of nutrients that are going to all really be synergistic together. So you can take vitamin A separately, but really when you eat a carrot, there's 1,000 other chemical compounds in that carrot that are going to help improve your health overall, including your vision. So just to know for people to not get so stuck in these colors being associated with these particular nutrients too. Really, there's so much more to nutrition just from eating a whole food, plant-based, approach with plenty of protein and fat. There's so many nutrients that all come together in these whole foods. It's not the same to just take a vitamin A supplement. It really is much more beneficial for your health overall to get these nutrients from your food.
Yeah, I guess we can tackle that a little bit later, talking about, green powders and pills that have, veggies and fruits, if that's even beneficial or not. But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to, how about yellows, because this one's good for your eyes as well, with the lutein and your favorite word that I always have trouble pronouncing.
Zeaxanthin.
Yes. And so those ones are particularly helpful for the eyes, right? So again, things like bell peppers are yellow. You can actually get yellow carrots too. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. Sorry. Going back a little bit about orange vegetables, sweet potatoes, yams more specifically. I just want to give some tips about yams to get them into your diet. Yeah, sure, you can eat them, as a side, but you can also be creative. Like, I know everyone's into avocado toast these days. You can actually slice up that yam and make that be your bread, your toast, and have avocado on top of that. So it's a yam avocado toast. The other thing I really like to do is when you're having that sweet craving or you really want, chocolate cake, what you can do is you can take that sweet potato or yam and add in just like a tablespoon of almond butter and some cocoa powder, and you mix that all together, and because the yams are super sweet, it literally tastes like chocolate cake. It's so good. So that's a great thing to do to get more of these colored nutrients in while also satisfying that need for something sweet.
Yeah, I gotta make sure all this knowledge is great, but if you're not gonna actually eat it in your diet, it's pointless. And to have ways that make it palatable and enjoyable to make you want to eat it is the next level of this game. Speaking of that, then maybe let's go through each food group and we list certain foods, but the best, probably, most pleasing ways are to prepare them. Like tomatoes, at least personally, I think roasting them is the best. Not everybody likes that, including yourself, but many people, right, when you roast vegetables in the oven, put some olive oil on them, or ideally you want to use avocado oil because it has a higher tolerance for oxidation. Again, we're talking about oxidation, damaging the oils, which happens at higher and higher temperatures of heat. Don't use olive oil at high temperatures of heat. So if you're roasting in the oven, you probably want to use an avocado oil or
coconut
oil or ghee. Yeah. And then you just put a little salt on it, pink Himalayan salt, and roast in the oven at a high temperature for 40 minutes or longer until you get there's just a little bit of caramelization, and it just kind of breaks down the fiber, so it's not as tough, and it just, especially for tomatoes, tastes really good. Carrots, so you can do the same thing, and peppers. Yeah. Actually, those are actually the three that probably do the best with roasting them, or on a grill. You can do it in a grill too.
Yeah, super tasty, and again, then you're adding in that fat, which helps you absorb the vitamin, which is perfect. And the other thing is you can blend all those things together and create a sauce or even soup, right? So that makes it super easy. You can just pour it on top of maybe some rice you have or something else, and you're getting so much flavor and vegetables, and you didn't even have to chew them.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's talk about the color green. Those people we know who don't like vegetables, but there's the sulfur-rich veggies like cruciferous veggies. How are those helpful for our health?
Yep, it's actually really interesting. It's one of my favorite topics in the vegetable field of sulforaphane, because sulforaphane is actually a chemical in plants that is defensive for plants. So it actually is not so good for humans and creates more unrest in your body than it does good, but that's actually a beneficial thing, which is surprising and kind of counterintuitive. This is hormesis.
Okay.
Hormesis is the process of something being bad and harmful for your body in a dose that is where a smaller dose is beneficial. So you take like cold, for example, if you stay in a cold bath for too long, you're gonna die from hypothermia. But if you just do a short burst for 30 seconds, it's beneficial. Same with sulforaphane and some of these plant foods that have chemicals that are damaging to the human body. If you take them in small amounts, it promotes a healing response, and your body gets stronger as a result. So that's why broccoli and kale and cauliflower, all in the brassica family, the cruciferous vegetable family, like you're saying, are beneficial because when you're eating them in small amounts, your body's immune system is triggered, and this is where you have an anti-cancer effect to help promote cell death in cells that are junky and need to die to turn over new cells. So interesting how most people think of plants as being harmless, but there's actually a number of, and we can talk about that too later, but there's a number of plant chemicals that are potentially harmful for the body, but may be beneficial if used the right way.
Right. And the other thing I'm thinking of cruciferous vegetables in particular being harmful is for some people when they're eaten raw, right? So what's the deal with that?
Yeah, women with thyroid, we see this a lot, that women that are trying to do well for their body and they're eating better, they're eating a lot of vegetables, but if you have hypothyroidism and you're eating raw vegetables, that can block thyroid function.
Yeah, especially these cruciferous ones. So if you cook them, that's okay, but just eating that, dip in raw broccoli is not doing yourself a service. On the other hand, though, if you're hyperthyroid, then you may want to do that more often to help kind of mitigate some of that thyroid hormone that's going on. So always depends on what your circumstance is, how you should be eating these veggies. But I would say for me, in terms of greens, two things I like to do. I like to, I guess 3 things. One is the air fryer, which everyone loves these days. If you cut up some collards or some kale, you can create chips pretty quickly. With again a little bit of avocado oil and some pink Himalayan sea salt, something like that, or maybe some cumin, the little spices, that can be super tasty. But I also like to cook them in the slow cooker along with, some of our roasts or something like that to get some of that meaty broth, bone broth flavor in them. So that's a really great way. And then of course, adding them to smoothies is a super easy way to get tons of vegetables without even really realizing it. You do, though, want to blanch them quickly before you put them in the smoothie. So that just means steam them quick or pour some boiling water on. Because again, eating them raw is not always the greatest. It's hard for your body to digest and absorb them. So if you cook it, it's going to help them blend better with your protein or your, oil your coconut oil that you maybe add for extra fat in your smoothie or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. So that's important.
Yeah, just as a general tip for eating vegetables, you generally want to eat them cooked or steamed lightly. Just like we're talking about, if you're having raw vegetables all the time, you're then forcing or making your body do all the work, your stomach to digest the raw plant fiber completely. So if you pre-cook it a bit, you're kind of pre-cooking it for your stomach as well, so that your stomach doesn't have to do as much work to digest it. That can save some energy for everything else and stress of life. Just to generally lean toward at least steaming your vegetables, light steam, and at most, a saute or a roast.
Yeah. The other quote-unquote harmful thing I'm thinking about in green vegetables, like for example spinach, would be oxalates, right? Does that bother some people? How so?
Yeah, so kidney stones are a concern for people, or maybe you've had them in the past and you don't want them to develop again, so you want to avoid oxalate stones. It might even be a uric acid stone. There's different types of stone, because you want to know what you're dealing with. Then in that case, you would just want to go with a more alkaline diet, avoid organ meats and other foods that contain uric acid. But in general, there's not every vegetable is good for every person, so you want to customize. It's all about individualized medicine.
Yeah, I find that sometimes oxalates can irritate people's throats too. There's different things that can do that. So, if you feel like you're having a reaction to a vegetable, just because it's healthy doesn't necessarily mean it's great for you. So always pay attention to those things. But at the same time, there are so many different vegetables in the world that you can try. if you just go to an Asian market, there's, probably 5 different green vegetables that you've never tried before. So still really easy to get all your different colors, even if you're avoiding certain ones.
Yeah, and experiment more. A lot of people are too stuck in what you said at the beginning, just eating the same things over and over. And if you grew up like I grew up, eating just canned peas and carrots for your vegetables, ketchup as your vegetable, then it can be a little uncomfortable to start trying new foods that you haven't been eating your whole life, like these other things. So to experiment a little bit. When I moved to Portland and we met in school in Oregon, it's a very different culture there versus where I grew up in New Jersey. And so there's farmers markets and a lot more organic produce everywhere. And I remember finding the first time when I found this, it was like this purple, I don't know what it was when I looked at it. I didn't know if it was a plant or just, that you can eat or like a house plant. I don't know what it was, but it was just like this purple cauliflower variety, I guess is what it was. And it has this perfectly geometric, perfectly symmetrical shape.
Yes.
What's that called?
Romanesco.
Try that, steam it, and it's great. Yeah. So just, you might find a new favorite fruit or vegetable just by go to the Asian store, the Indian, grocery store, and just see what they have and just try new things.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorites is fennel, like the bulb of fennel, which is white, which we could talk about now, the different kind of white veggies. But that's super good if you cut it up, roast it like you were talking about. And our son really, I would say that's his favorite vegetable. Along with pumpkin, that's another great one to use for orange. We put that in lots of things. You can make, protein powder and pumpkin waffles. You can make pumpkin muffins. You can put pumpkin in your smoothie. Pumpkin is so great. Put it in everything. Definitely. Pumpkin soup, pumpkin, and I know we only, most people eat it in a certain season, but I say do it all year. It's a great food. Okay, so going back to whites, so things like onions and garlic, are those good things? Should we be eating them? What's the deal there?
Yep, they have a lot of antimicrobial effects. If you're like me and have usually, the gut is one place where people have bacterial imbalance, and if you have IBS and gas and bloating and bowel movement issues, it's because there's dysfunction in the digestive tract, and part of that is the microbial ecology there. So all the bugs, there's a lot of bugs. There's like 10 times as many or more, 10, 20, 30 times as many bacteria and microbes in your gut as there are cells in your human body.
Crazy.
Yep, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. So you want to help the ones that are good and beneficial flourish, and the bad ones to remain below a threshold. So for me, a few years ago, we just moved to Florida, where we are now, and I was trying to put weight on it at the time. So I thought it was a good idea to eat, try to eat more protein, get more calories in without eating a bunch of garbage. So one of my ideas was to eat the Halo Top ice cream, because it has high protein, low sugar, because they use the no calorie sweeteners. I thought that was a great idea, so I did that for a long time, and I ended up getting pretty severe gas, bloating, and I never felt that before. So if you experience this too, then my heart goes out to you, because it's super uncomfortable to feel like your belly is like a big drum, and there's all this gas in there, and it's just so uncomfortable. So I didn't know what was going on.
Those were sugar alcohols, right? So not like a Splenda or something in the Halo Top.
Yeah, so that's what I ended up figuring out. So now I go to do some research, and I'm like, something I'm doing is obviously triggering this, because I'm doing all these new things, trying to put weight on. What's happening? I look at the ice cream, and come to find out that there are sugar alcohols in the ice cream that the bad bacteria feed off of, like erythritol, maltitol. There's a number of these that have no calories, but the cost is that they can help bad bacteria to replicate and replicate out of control, and then cause these symptoms: gas, bloating. They ferment and produce air, and that's just not comfortable at all. So I eliminated that. In addition to that, testing for SIBO, and was positive for that, which is dysbiosis, like we're talking about, imbalance in your small intestine. And then you can use vegetables like onion and garlic as antimicrobial support for helping to kill these bacteria, while you're also starving them of the source, because you don't just want to treat the symptoms here. And in a case like this, I mean, you do want to do that, but you also want to get the root of the problem, which is removing the trigger. You keep scraping your arm, by walking by this thorn every day, just putting a Band-Aid over it, it's only going to help so much. You just got to, remove the thorn from your forearm. So you remove the trigger, but also use garlic and onion, and use the isolated version of allicin, which is the antimicrobial active component in garlic. You can get that in capsule form, so you take that daily instead of having to eat garlic that can cause some unpleasant breath.
Well, and you kind of had the same experience when you ate a bunch of garlic, which you thought was going to help from the antimicrobial situation.
That was a bad night.
But you ended up with more gas and bloating, because that can actually trigger that if you do have small intestinal
Yeah, so you want to be
bacterial
careful with that
overgrowth.
too.
Yeah.
It's garlic has a lot of FODMAPs. FODMAPs are types of saccharides in foods that help produce or
What the heck
help
is
the
a
bacteria
saccharide?
to cut out the carbohydrate. So
Yeah, so again, you got to be careful of doses and this and that. Just because something's a good thing doesn't mean you should overdo it. I mean, in your case, I think you ate like 40 cloves of garlic or something.
yes, because I roasted it. It was delicious, just like roasting any other vegetable. But I was
Yeah.
definitely did not end well. So I learned that lesson.
But at the same time, both those things can be really great. I remember in college, I was tabling for an event. It was like a health event, and I created these natural, quote unquote, flu shots for people. And so what it really was I blended things like garlic and onion with some other vitamin-rich sources, orange and this and that. Point being, it was not supposed to taste good. It was really about the antioxidant and the antimicrobial properties, all these things. So it was literally a shot that you drink to protect you against the flu or a cold or something like that. So just a different way to look at the flu shot. But onion and garlic were important in that, ginger. And the other thing you can use onion a lot for is things like ear infections, actually garlic too. You can, the garlic drops you can put in your ears, and the onions you can kind of saute and put them in like a cheesecloth and hold that up to your ear.
Yeah.
And again, because of these antimicrobial properties, they really help fight off whatever bacteria is growing there.
Yeah, it's I think a pattern there with the botany. There's not that I know anything about botany, but these are all root vegetables that grow underground. There's more immune properties there, kind of across the board.
Yeah.
And then like ginger, you mentioned ginger, makes you think of fire cider.
Yeah.
Fire cider, you basically make this little cauldron of apple cider vinegar, and then you put in all these vegetables with these antimicrobial immune boosting properties, like ginger and
Some people
and
even
cinnamon,
put jalapenos or something in there.
peppers, yeah, right, and spiced peppers.
Little kick.
Yep, and again, it's it stimulates your body to become stronger, stimulates your immune system to produce white blood cells. And, you let this thing sit for like a month or however long it is. We've done it in a while, but it tastes really straight. You just need a little shot of this stuff once it's ready and it's done its thing. And then you do that once in a while. It's kind of a folk remedy for optimizing your immune system and preventing colds. So, there's a lot of ways to optimize your immune system and prevent, the flu or COVID or whatever it is that you want to avoid by boosting your immune system in natural ways, using foods that contain nutrients that feed your immune system.
Yeah, we're telling all these stories, so this is reminding me, going back to carotene and carotenoids and things like that. Our neighbor actually is from Russia, and she was telling me that every time she got sick as a kid, her mom would have her put carrot juice up her nose. So kind of like a neti pot. And she said it would sting and all that, but again, it's that vitamin A content that, a folk remedy, they just naturally knew that vitamin A would help fight off these colds.
Wow, yeah, amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So let's talk about, we haven't covered the blues and purples yet. So the anthocyanins, what are those good for?
Yeah. So I mean, you have anthocyanins, and mostly berries are probably the biggest, most common food where you find that, like not raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, and the the antioxidant. I mean, effect of these things, just like any other antioxidant, helping to prevent oxidation and optimize your health overall with energy, your immune system regulation for cancer prevention, and prevention of Alzheimer's. So your brain health has a lot to do with cognition and preventing the development of like amyloid plaques. These dark blues and purples really good for immune system and nervous system.
Yeah. And the other thing that we often recommend them for, so you can get little concentrates specifically of these anthocyanins. So it's kind of like drinking a blueberry juice or something, except for it's much more concentrated, and it doesn't really have as much sugar because they're really trying to take out those anthocyanins. But anyways,
It has all the flavor.
It has all the flavor, which is great. So you can add it to like a seltzer or something like
Make
that.
mocktails.
Little mocktail. But it's really great helping with high blood pressure too. It really helps with the cardiovascular system. So that's a great thing to be consuming. And, you know, oftentimes if people are struggling with things like blood sugar imbalances, we'll tell them, you know, sure, if you're gonna have fruit, like go for the lower glycemic index fruits, things like berries, because berries, for the amount of sugar that they have, way less than other fruits, but they have so many beneficial nutrients compared to other fruits too. Like a banana versus a blueberry is a totally different story there. So if you're gonna go for a fruit, you know, just to snack on, I would definitely say go for those berries.
Yep, lower glycemic index and highest concentration of nutrients for any fruit. If you're someone who's, just depends where you are on the health spectrum here. If you're starting out, like right now, if you just eat like Doritos and fast food and you have sweet cravings and you go for cookies or whatever, instead switch to fruit in general, whatever fruit it is.
Yeah.
As you start to like those fruits, you know, and you just develop a palate for it, which you will develop a palate for because every 14 days your tongue cells, the taste bud receptors in your tongue turn over. So you will, you know, your cravings will change and your ability to taste new flavors will change over that time. But just start out slowly making your step, you know, in that direction. Start with switching to just whole fruit, which has fiber in it, not fruit juice, because fiber helps the blood sugar response. Otherwise, you're just basically drinking like sugar and water when you drink fruit juice.
True.
And then just start slowly stepping over, you know, to different types of fruit, and then try to experiment with berries, and then we end up back where we are. But just for people who, you know, all over the spectrum here, who struggle with cravings, there's a lot of people struggling with sweet cravings.
Yeah. The other purple vegetable I want to mention quickly is eggplant. So, you know, some people use eggplant as alternatives for things like, for example, you could do your eggplant parmesan instead of getting the pasta, you're getting that veggie. But the reason I wanted to mention it, because I forgot to mention it when we talked about tomatoes and peppers, is this is a family of vegetables called the nightshades. And although they have beautiful colors and can be helpful in some ways, if you're someone who has an autoimmune condition, for example, they can actually make things worse for you and your immune system. And the idea behind that is these particular plants cannot hold up their own weight. So if you think about an eggplant sitting on the vine, it's going to droop, or the same thing with a tomato. And so in the body, it can't hold up its weight either. It's kind of affecting you in a negative way. Again, not true for everyone, but just something to point out as well there. But you mentioned juice. How do you feel about like green juices? Because a lot of people are doing that to get their vegetables. Do you feel like that's a good idea or not a good idea?
Yeah, it's all on a spectrum. If you're someone, and then we might as well also talk about the greens powders here too, because if you're someone who doesn't get any vegetables in ever, then having green juice is going to be a way to go for you. As long as you're avoiding fruit juices, because oftentimes they're loading these green juices with fruit juice to make them really sweet and palatable and spike that dopamine in your brain to keep you addicted to it and keep buying the product. So whether it's natural sugar or cane sugar or artificial sugar, doesn't matter. Your body still responds in a similar way. So go for the green juice as long as it doesn't have any, read the ingredient list. Usually you'll see the first couple ingredients probably say apple juice or pear juice. Those are the most fruit juices most often used to sweeten these things. You want just a juice made from just greens, basically, or just vegetables that aren't really rich in starches. Might be sweetened with beets too. Beets aren't a fruit, but they're still very, very sweet. Or carrots, which is fine. You do these things once in a while. It's not going to kill you, but in general, your general pattern, you want to avoid having juices that are just sugar and water, basically, and just go for something like celery and kale and cilantro or something. Those are 3 leafy type greens, then celery, also, which is not a starchy fruit, just full of minerals and vitamins. So in that case, it's totally fine for anyone to do, as long as you're still eating whole foods, whole vegetables, and having a whole stick of celery, or steamed kale or whatever too. Don't just stick to juice. Ideally, you're doing both, I guess.
Right, and the same, cautions we gave before. If you're someone with a thyroid condition, you shouldn't just be drinking raw kale juice, right? Which I know is the health trend these days, but that's not going to be healthy for you. So just pay attention to those things. You think you're doing something healthy, but sometimes, with the added sugar or this or that, it's actually not so great for you.
Yeah.
So, okay, and then the green powders, you kind of have the same opinion about, it sounds like.
There's not really much conclusive evidence in the research about whether these powders are, good or just a bunch of baloney. So it's nice and convenient to think that you can just take a scoop of powder, put it in water, and that's your vegetables for the day. But, when you take the life out of seed, you take the water out of it, you're dehydrating these plants and then blending them up, powderizing them, putting them in a bottle and selling them. Is that, when you remove the water, it removes the life out of something too. So, you do add water back into it, and does that, reliven it up again? Maybe, but maybe a lot of the nutrients you're getting are kind of dead nutrients. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I do use green powders here and there, right? When you don't have anything else, sure. I mean, it's kind of like a freeze dried situation. So just freeze dried strawberries or whatever it may be. But my concern with them is really they need to be organic, and a lot of the powders out there are not, right? But if you think about it, to get a little bit of powder, you have to have a lot of vegetable or a lot of fruit for that to happen. So if that's not organic and there's pesticides on that, you're really concentrating those pesticides and then you're intaking that. So that's a huge thing. Also, they've found different heavy metal loads within those powders just because a lot of the heavy metals are in the soil, and so then they're on the vegetables, and then again you're concentrating it. So really important to look up the companies that you're taking and make sure you know what those heavy metal loads are and make sure they're organic. So that's one thing. And then, similarly with if you're taking a supplement that's full of fruits and vegetables, or a gummy, right? Gummies often have added sugars, so that's one thing to pay attention to. But also, again, you want to make sure they're sourced from organic. So just pay attention to that.
Yeah, something called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So if you haven't seen these lists too, when you're buying fruits and vegetables, you want to avoid these pesticides, heavy metals, and a bunch of other crap that are on these vegetables when they're producing these crops. So if you go to it's the EWG website, I guess, you'll find the Clean 15, the Dirty Dozen. They redo it every year to let you know what crops are the most clean and least with the least need to buy organic for that type of fruit or vegetable. And then other ones where you definitely want to buy organic because they're heavily laden with pesticides, etc. So
yeah. Because I know for some people, financially it's a struggle to always buy organic, for example. So there's ways that you can kind of, choose some things that are less risky. So generally the rule of thumb is something that has a peel, right? That you're going to take off. If that's coated in pesticides, it's not going to affect you as much because you're eating what's inside.
yeah.
So, things like a banana or an avocado, you don't necessarily have to buy organic because they're kind of protected. But then, on the other hand, something like a strawberry, which just gets covered in spray, that's a big one that really should be organic. So that's the general rule, but like Dr. Adams said, EWG, that stands for Environmental Working Group. So they do a lot of research each year to figure out, where are all the toxins that we're getting in our beauty products or our food or whatever it may be. So they're a great resource to use for sure. And they have an app also that you can check out called Healthy Living, I believe. So that's something. But the other thing I thought we should talk about is just other ideas for getting some of these vegetables in. I know I talked about, pumpkin and putting that in different things and different ways to eat sweet potatoes or yams. The other one that I like to utilize a lot is cauliflower, because it's kind of a not super strong tasting vegetable, so I feel like it's easy to incorporate with a lot of things. And the food industry is catching on, because now you can find cauliflower pizza crusts and cauliflower rice in the frozen section, which are great alternatives to eating, if you have trouble with gluten or something like that.
Yeah.
So those two things are great. The other thing you can do is actually throw, just like I do with the greens, you can throw your cooked cauliflower into your smoothies as well, because again, you won't really taste that. So just different ways, because I know not everyone loves the taste of veggies. Anything that you like to do with vegetables? I'm trying to think.
Just telling me about this new recipe that she likes making, which is called dirty rice. And it's using cauliflower rice, and you add in other types of vegetables like mushrooms and peppers to give it some color, and spices too, and or kind of oil. You just fry it all up together. And so just different ways to get the fiber and the various nutrients that are in all these different color profiles of the rainbow. So incorporating them all into a dish where you normally use rice, which is high in starches and carbohydrates, which is fine with, but most people are trying to lose weight. To do that, you got to lower your overall calorie load and improve your metabolism. To do that, the carbs usually need to be swapped in for protein, fat, fiber. To do that, you want to use other foods that are rich in nutrients too, like vegetables. So you can swap in, like for rice, instead of doing rice, which is starch rich, instead you swap in cauliflower, which has almost no starch, almost no carbs, so just fiber, and very, very low calories, but you're still going to be, full by the end, because fiber is very filling. And combine that with fat and protein, and your hormones are going to get what they need. You're going to be satiated, full from the protein especially. The fat is what gives it mouthfeel to enjoy the experience of eating it, and add some salt and pepper and spices to all this.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to enjoy what you eat.
Yeah, I think that's a key there too. And you also mentioned cilantro before, right? Spices and herbs are plants, right? So if you're aiming to get more colors in and more plants, then herbs are a great way to go, right? You can make a parsley cilantro dressing to put on with some lemon and some vinegar, right?
Yeah.
Or you can throw your herbs into everything you make, right? Your chicken and your vegetables. And so really utilize spices. I feel like a lot of people are kind of afraid of spices.
Yeah.
But again, you also want to make sure your spices are organic as much as possible. And nightshade things like peppers, red pepper, that kind of thing you want to be aware of. But use the spices for sure. That's lots of colors. So how many vegetables do you think people should be eating per day, or like what should their serving size be generally?
Well, how many vegetables? That stat. Back in caveman days, people used to eat like 33 different vegetables a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, I think there's a whole kind of group that aims to have 30 plants a week. So if you're already trying to get 5 colors at each meal, you're well on your way definitely to get 30 in a week.
Yep, and just how your body evolved back in caveman times. When you were hunter-gatherers, you'd be hunting, animals, but gathering plants that grew around where you lived. And it wouldn't just be one crop; it'd be multiple, or a lot of different things in your environment, in the land where that you inhabited in your community. So you'd be eating a large variety, and so mimic that today. You wouldn't just be going back to the same garden every day, just picking the same crop. Rather, you'd be getting variety. So you just want to think about that with your diet now, like getting variety in these colors, and every day, maybe that 30 a week works out to 4 per day, 4 different vegetables a day. So have a red, a blue, a green, and a yellow, for example. And maybe, say if you, it depends where you are too. Again, you eat no vegetables now, just eat one per day. Just one time, have a vegetable. If you're already having 1 or 2 servings of vegetables, double it. Go to 2 servings at each meal. And then maybe max out around 3. And then fill in the other parts of your plate with fat, protein, which, a few thumbs worth of fat. You think about your hand as a portion guide.
Yeah, because everyone has different sizes, so that's going to correspond with your body. Otherwise, I would say, a quarter cup of vegetables, doing 1 or 2 of those per meal is going to be beneficial.
Yeah, that's why I guess when I say a couple servings, let's say I have to quantify it by quarter cup.
Quarter cup.
Or like if you were to grab it, again using your hand, to grab a palmful with your fingers closed, how much that would be inside your hand here as a serving.
Okay. Yeah, you keep mentioning protein and fat, and I was just thinking about, olives and avocados, like fruits, right? But they're a really great thing for us to eat to get our healthy fats. So any other like nutrition tips you feel like people should know? There are 5 different colors, having 2 quarter cups of vegetables, you said a palm size of protein and some fat. Anything else that you feel like is really important for people to know?
Just with the fats, yeah, I mean, you have plant fats and animal fats. Plant fats, like you just said, they're what you normally think of as vegetables, but are actually fruits because they have a big seed in the middle, and that's the olive and avocado and coconut. So those are more omega-3s. In the olive oil, you don't want to cook with it, but you use it, pour it over your food, over some steamed vegetables afterward, or even meat, like whatever it is, just use it as a topping. But avocado oil you can use, and coconut oil to roast with or saute with. Then you have the animal fats, which think about like ghee, or which is butter. Always, go for organic and grass-fed, grass-finished. Tallow, which comes from beef, much less common to find, but basically it's like just the fat isolated from cow, from beef, just isolating the fat. Also has a super high vitamin content. I use it for
you use it topically, right?
Topically, yeah. For like I had a barbell injury at the gym a few months ago, and I had this big kind of wound on my lower leg, and I was using the vitamin E oil from tallow. That helped it heal up pretty good. Not much of a scar left. So, but yeah, just know it. The point is, you want a variety of both plant fats and animal fats. You want both. They have different nutrients. Plant versus animal, that is. Just like we're saying, different colors of vegetables have different nutrients.
Okay, and like lard too. You like some lard?
Lard, yeah. I mean, if you're getting it again from quality sources, bacon is not bad for you. You want to get it from an organic source that's nitrate free, and then bacon's fine. Don't. A lot of people think eating red meat and bacon are bad, but it's all about the quality. They are very good for you, and go into the cardiovascular risk discussion maybe briefly, but it's really a lot of that's myth. In terms of fat making your cholesterol higher, which increases your cardiovascular risk. Long story short, maybe that's material for another episode, but fat does not make you fat. Fat doesn't increase your cardiovascular risk, especially when we're talking about quality fat, is really what I mean. It's more eating carbohydrates and processed foods and processed carbs and sugars that are damaging your vascular system and your metabolism, that are driving up inflammation. And then cholesterol is kind of coming to the scene as an after effect to repair the damage in your blood vessels. And so your cholesterol levels aren't a direct tie to your risk. It's more the type of foods you're eating in your diet. Processed foods and garbage versus eating a whole foods plant-based diet is what's going to optimize your chances of longevity and decreasing risk of heart attack. Your cholesterol is only tied 15% to your diet. Your diet, that is, only influences about 15% of your cholesterol levels.
The other thing that you often talk about is organ meats, and because we're just talking about like tips and tricks of how people can incorporate these things without necessarily like tasting them, what would you suggest doing to get some of those organ meats? Because those have lots of like nutrients in them as well, right?
Yep, you can eat heart and brain and testicle and all these weird things. But if you're gonna go for one, go for liver.
Okay.
Liver. So, liver's got a myriad of nutrients in it. Way too many to list, but that's why it's always been considered a superfood. So, how could people fit liver into their diet?
Make your liver into a roux. So, you know, a roux is what you make prior to making a sauce, so it kind of thickens things up. So you could add that, you know, it could be part of your Mediterranean sauce, or it could be part of your soup, or it could be part of your spaghetti sauce, right? You can mix your liver with your ground beef, and then you don't really know, like the texture's not there, it doesn't give a huge taste because it's, you know, camouflaged in the tomato sauce. So if you're someone who struggles to eat just plain like liver and onions, which I know some people do, then that's a great thing to do to blend it up there. But again, there's this whole other conversation like we're having with the green powders, right? There's also capsules for these organs that you again want to make sure are sourced well.
Similar, you know, the DIY way to do that would be just to get liver, and another way to mask the taste really is to cut it into chunks. Do you cook it, or some people eat it raw? Cut it into little tiny chunks, just a couple cubic centimeters, really small, the size of a couple marbles, and then put that in the freezer. So then it freezes. When you take it out, you're ready to eat it. Just have one of those little cubes pop it in your mouth. It's hard to taste because it's frozen. And so, easy way to get it done. Yeah, it's surprised that the texture of it doesn't. I don't know why. It's not like ice, where you can't chew it. It does like you can nom on it, and it does kind of break up and make it more easy to swallow. Just the texture of it just doesn't freeze to be rock solid. Yeah, so it works. Probably another organ that you think of your bones as an organ, but they are. They're very alive and they're always changing and very active. But bone broth has a lot of health benefits and really easy to use too. It's hard, so you can make it at home. So you similar, ask the butcher for in the bones. Or sometimes at the back of Whole Foods they have little packs of the bones. You can come home and boil them for like 24 hours. You put some salt in it, some spices, and it tastes really good. It's got the collagen in it, which is great for hair, skin, nails, tendons, ligaments, joint strength, and the protein from a lot of amino acids from the animal source. And just animal proteins tend to be better for bioavailability, your body's ability to use them and absorb them, so especially for building muscle and again bone strength, because that's what you're doing. If you want to grow stronger bones and muscles, eating flesh and meat and bone broth is going to obviously help give your body the building blocks that it needs to build those tissues.
Yeah, the other one I'm thinking about when you're saying bone is the bone marrow too. It's the other one that people don't really eat but should.
Yep, it's just not as normal today in our culture, but that's really Chinese medicine. The bone marrow is the essence of life energy that we're all born with. We have a limited amount of, but it's more easily replenished by things like bone marrow and foods, organ meats.
Yeah, and with bone marrow, you can also get that at just like a normal grocery store if you ask the butcher, but you essentially can just kind of coat it with some apple cider vinegar, and then you can kind of boil it for long amounts of time and eat it after that. And that can be really great for people who have any kind of nervous system dysfunction going on, or issues with autoimmunity against their nerves or muscles, so that's a great thing to consume. The bone broth is not too hard to make though, if you just use your crock pot and throw in some bones, and again, apple cider vinegar. It's really the key. It's kind of like the Windex in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? Works for a lot of things, so Yeah, those are great tips generally, just eating in general, whether you're plant-based or kind of do both animal and plants. The only other thing I would say that we could just give a little advice on is what about organic versus grass-fed versus pasture-raised? Like, what are your thoughts about those titles on different products?
Beware of marketing is the short answer. Not all these things are what they are labeled as, or rather, what it's labeled as doesn't mean what you think it means. Because these companies want you to buy these products, and they're riding this wave of green, grassy kind of words and language that make people feel like, oh, it's natural, or oh,
All
it's
natural.
yeah, it must be good for me.
Yeah.
So, all natural is that definitely doesn't mean anything. That's that one you can just throw out. If you see that, it doesn't mean anything. And then you have grass fed. That's good if you're talking about meat. Means that animal that had been fed grain was like a cow out in the pasture eating grass, but oftentimes they're finished with grains. So then
To fatten them up at the end.
and,
To fatten them up at the end, right? So
Yeah.
they can get more money.
yeah, the butter that comes from that animal or the milk if you can help it.
Like cage free or pasture raised or organic,
You explain this one better.
vegetarian fed. So yeah, again, these labels. So vegetarian fed for eggs. I know people think that's a good thing, but chickens eat bugs and worms and things like that. So if they're fed vegetarian fed, that means they're probably fed genetically modified corn, right? Which is not necessarily great for us. The modified foods that we're eating can cause issues later down the road. So I would throw the vegetarian fed out for that one. And same with anything, whether, you're buying pork and it says vegetarian fed or other things. If it doesn't also say organic, then you're most likely getting genetically modified foods. So organic is important with meats, but with eggs, what you really want to look for is that pasture raised, because again, that means they're out grazing, they're able to eat what they normally eat. If you just buy cage free, all that really means is there's still a ton of chickens in a warehouse, but they're all stuck next to each other, squished. And for them to put the label cage free on it means that they have 5 minutes a day access to the outside, which just means they open one door in that warehouse a little bit for 5 minutes. If you're a stuck chicken and there's thousands of you in there, you cannot get outside in 5 minutes, let alone be outside. So cage free is not really necessarily that much better than, being caged inside the warehouse.
Yeah.
So I would throw that one out too. Really, you want to go for that pasture raised and organic. And then for your meats, you want the grass fed, grass finished, organic. That's important. And the other one you'll often see is hormone free. So actually for poultry, so like turkey and chicken, they're not supposed to put hormones anyways. So sometimes it's just kind of redundant for that to put that. But again, it's all marketing. So make sure you understand your labels. That's really important too. So organic for some vegetables, unless it's the Clean 15, which you should look up today if you haven't seen that yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna do 5 colors at every meal, 1 to 2 servings of vegetables. We're gonna work on adding in some organ meats maybe and get our healthy fats and our protein at every meal.
Yeah.
What else?
Rainbow, as many colors as you can, up to 30. Well, I guess not 30 colors a week, but try to get a different color
30
of your 4 to 5 vegetables each day. Make those all a different color. Over the week, you'll probably hit them all. Yeah, protein from quality sources. If there's anything from fat, organic, grass-fed, grass-finished, and water and hydrating enough, because water is the basis of life. And don't be afraid to use salt and spices too. Even salt, unless you have high blood pressure, but even then, you want to get a variety of micro minerals that are going to help your blood pressure too, like pink Himalayan salt. Use the right type of salt. It's going to benefit you in other ways. And
yeah, I think these are all great tips, you know, hiding your vegetables in other foods and different things if you have trouble with your vegetables. So if you've liked these tips today, definitely follow us. You know, our Instagram is live.wellness.health, and our Facebook as well. Our website is livewellness.health, not .com. So check us out. Follow our podcast as well. We're super happy that you joined us today in our hour of holistic health in our Our Time to Thrive podcast. So thanks so much for listening, for joining in, and we're excited to see you in another week.
Yeah, stay well.